Hey guys, it's Karalynn and welcome back to the podcast where we talk about all the ways not to get screwed in the construction industry. In today's topic, we're going to talk about change orders and what they are and how they work. So let's first talk about why we need a change order. Okay, so the general rule about documents and contracts is that the agreement you sign is the agreement that's enforceable. There's no text, verbal talk, or anything that will change the terms of that agreement. The only way that you can change the terms of that agreement is in writing signed by both parties, aka the change order, right? In other industries, it might be called an addendum. They might refer to it other things, but basically what you're doing is legally changing the terms of the contract, which is why a change order is required if we're going to change the scope of work, the time frame. If you're changing anything, it doesn't have to be like the scope of work. It could be if you're changing the completion date or whatever you need to change in the contract, you can do it with a change order. Basically, what you need to know is once you sign that document, it doesn't matter what was said. It's that document that controls. And the only way to change it is through something in writing signed by both parties. And in the construction industry, that's referred to as a change order. Now, I'm going to break change orders down from commercial to residential because they're two completely different animals, right? In residential, you get to write your own contracts and you can say what a change order is. In commercial contracts and commercial subcontracts, you're given a contract that has a change order provision and you have very little room to negotiate what's in there. So let's start with commercial subcontracts or commercial project contracts that have change order provisions. So the first thing that you want to do is go to the change order provision. It's usually a page or a page and a half long about how change orders are handled, right? And so it's going to tell you who can approve a change order, when they'll be approved, all the technicals of when you have to submit your request. If you see extra work, like if you don't timely submit the request and you don't flag it, then you're not going to be entitled to be paid extra for it. If you go ahead and do the work and don't get a signed change order and it's extra, you're not going to be entitled to get paid for that extra work. So that contract is going to detail, make sure you pay attention to who. Sometimes it's not the project managers on the job site that can approve it. Sometimes it's somebody back at the office you have to get the approval for. So make sure you're paying attention to the very technicals of the contract of who, what, when, where, and why on a change order. Another thing to watch out for is if they send you a change order request, who are they going to send it to and what time frame do you have to respond, right? So I think it was an electrical contractor I represented one time who signed the contract and the estimator's email was in there as the contact point. And the GC sent out a request for a change order because they knew it was going to be a larger scope of work. In the contract, it says if you don't respond within 3 days, you agree it's not extra work. So the email got lost. They ended up doing $10,000 worth of extra work for free because they didn't look at the technicals of if we send a change order request, you got 3 days to respond. And if not, you agree that it's not extra. So very closely read those change order provisions. Make sure that they have the correct email of who they have to email for a change order request, knowing what's in there. So some other things to think about in commercial change orders is first, you have to get a signed change order before you do the work. If you do it and then ask for it afterwards, in most cases, you will not get it, right? So you have to get it done and signed and approved before you do the work. So make sure that's in there. If you do get an approved change order and it's going to change your schedule, right? Your completion date, make sure you also put that in the change order. Again, the schedule in the contract can't be changed unless it's in writings by both parties. And as we know, liquidated damages are tagged to that completion date that's in the contract. So if we want to extend that completion date, we have to have it in a change order. Don't assume that everybody knows that this is such a big change order that it'll take extra time. Make sure you put the extra time in the change order that you sign off on. So another thing that I've seen in the last couple of years in commercial subcontracts is what's called a change order directive. And what it basically says is that if there's a change order work that needs to be done, we agree that's all a change order, and we can't agree on the price of the change order, that the general contractor or owner can direct you to do the changes, and then you'll fight about payment later. That puts you in a really bad position, right? Of having to do the work now and fight about it in arbitration mediation after the project is done. And so we want to be very careful about those provisions. Some successful ways I've seen in handling them is to negotiate what the price would be, right? Time and materials plus 10% for profit and overhead. Build in the formula of what a change order would look like. So that way, when we get there, we know what it's going to be and we're not going to fight, right? We have been successful at doing that in change orders and pushing back there. So watch out for change order directives. Make sure you understand what it means and how you can negotiate them. Another thing in the commercial world when it comes to change orders are back charges, or AKA deductive change orders. This happens quite frequently in the commercial construction industry. Normally, when you get close to the end of the project, they are trying to make money back, and so they're going to try to charge you for things. Some may be valid, some might not be, right? Like if you broke a window, or if you did something wrong or scratched paint, then that would be a proper deductive change order, right? If you don't pay to fix it and they have to pay to fix it, then they're going to issue a deductive change order for the price. But not every deductive change order I've seen is valid. And so if you get a deductive change order that you don't agree with, here's some questions you should ask. Number one, get an invoice for who they paid. But not only an invoice, get a receipt, a proof of payment. Because one of the general rules in contracts is that in order to charge somebody damages that you've incurred, you actually have to incur those. You can't just say that you did, right? And so when a deductive change order comes over, the first thing you want to ask is, okay, what was this for? If you agree that it's in your scope, or could be possibly, ask for invoices and proof of payments. If they don't have those things, then it cannot be a legitimate back charge, right? If you disagree that it should be a deductive back charge that you're in charge of, please put a detailed response to why you disagree, that it's not yours, or they can't prove that they actually paid it. And if they still refuse to pay you, you can move forward with your lien rights. But asking those questions when it comes over and having a detailed written response is hugely important later on in the game, right? So don't just believe a deductive change order. Push back. Ask questions. You want to know why? If it's a subcontractor that they paid, you might pick up the phone and call the sub and say, were you actually paid extra for this, right? I had this huge case with a window subcontractor. And I think in this case, they were actually only the supplier of the windows. And it was a big apartment complex. And so they supplied the windows with the instructions of how to install it. The general contractor hired a sub way cheaper than what my client would do it for. But this particular sub had no experience in installing windows. So an issue came up on the window installation. And what actually happened is the sub who installed them incorrectly. And so my client went out there and said, okay, you've installed it incorrectly by the instructions we gave you, but here's a way you can fix it. And so they submitted all that. Well, then the general contractor tried to back charge my client, the window provider, $300,000 for extra cost that they had to pay this the subcontractor who was installing the windows. And so when I asked for proof of this extra money that they paid this sub, who was already a sub on the job, they're saying they had to pay him extra because, first off, it wasn't our fault, but second off, they were trying to say that it was, and here's the damages. They sent me a lien waiver for like $300,000. And I said, well, how am I supposed to know if this is what you paid him under his contract or if this is what you paid him extra, right? And so the more I dug into it, that they never paid him any extra for this work. They just paid him under the terms of his contract. So we were pretty successful on negotiating and getting a deal that favored my client. But don't just trust it. Ask questions. Be curious. If you have questions, you can reach out to me. We talk about your specific case. But it's very common, especially towards the end of the project, that these things start happening. So a specific note on liquidated damages, right? So you can also get a deductive change order for liquidated damages, a per day charge for the time you didn't finish on time. If that happens, you would request proof that the owner charged the general contractor liquidated damages, right? Because if the owner didn't charge the general contractor liquidated damages, they can't charge you. And even if they did charge liquidated damages, was it for your scope of work? So you want to dive into further. Don't just accept it. Let's ask some questions. Let's dig in, see if they were actually evaluated against the GC and if they specifically said for what scope of work. So there's some tools to push back on deductive change orders. All right, so let's switch gears. Let's talk about change orders and residential construction contracts. There's also a chapter of this in my new book, Trust Your Gut. It's all about change orders and residential construction contracts. So residential contractors have it way different. They get to write their contracts. They get to put their terms in there. But their considerations of who they're dealing with and who their client is different, right? So residential, for like a homeowner, they're not going to know the construction process. They're not going to know what a change order is or what it looks like. So your first job is to say, hey, I'm an expert at what I do, but there are going to be things that I can't foresee, right? Like if you're a roofing contractor, once you rip the shingles up, you don't know if the plywood or whatever's underneath is going to be bad and have to be replaced. So the first part of it in residential construction is letting the homeowner know that, hey, I'm an expert, but I can't see everything. Things might happen where it's going to increase the price, and here's how we're going to handle it. I'm going to dig into uncover the shingles. We're going to find out how many spots on the roof is bad, and we're going to talk about how much it's going to cost to do that extra work. Or if I'm a remodel contractor and I dig into a wall and see that all of the electrical has to be redone because that's something I couldn't see from the outside. This is how we're going to handle that. So just being upfront about how even though you're an expert, there can be things that are going to happen that you're not going to be able to predict. And this is how we're going to do it, right? Again, in residential construction especially, if they're requesting extra work that's going to cost extra money, do the change order, get the price, get it signed. And most times in residential construction, you can get paid for the change order before you do the actual work. So make sure if you don't have a signed change order and you have a contract that you have a signed contract, you're not going to be entitled to be paid for that extra work. And you'd be surprised how many homeowners get amnesia when you get to the end of the project and get ready to submit for change orders for extra work. And they don't remember those conversations of this is going to be extra. So please get it in writing, get it signed off on, and get paid for it before you do the actual work. So guys, that's some basic rules on change orders. I know I have some great blog articles on my website at the Cromeens Law Firm if you want to know more. But I'm here to answer any questions. Thanks.